The 15th of June, 1962. I am about to tell you about the most painful betrayal of my life. The man who sold me out wasn't some rival mobster or corrupt cop. It was Marcus's Smooth Henderson, my closest friend for 15 years. The man I'd trusted with my life, my secrets, my empire. The man I'd pulled out of poverty and made rich beyond his wildest dreams, and he sold all of that, sold me, for $30,000. What hurt most wasn't the money. It was the method. Smooth didn't just give information to the FBI. He wore a wire. For 6 months, he sat across from me at dinner tables, in my office, in my home, recording every word I said, every plan I made, every weakness I revealed, all while looking me in the eye and calling me brother. But here is what Smooth didn't know. In Harlem, when you betray family, you don't just disappear quietly. You face judgment. And I handled that judgment personally. Let me take you back to the beginning. 1947. I was walking down Lenox Avenue when I heard screaming from an alley. 3 men were beating a kid half to death, and that kid was Marcus Henderson. 19 years old, skin and bones, trying to protect $5 like it was his life savings. I could have kept walking, but something about the way that kid fought, even outmatched 3-1, caught my attention. He had heart, so I stepped in. "That is enough," I said. The 3 men turned. One of them, Tank, laughed. "This ain't your business, Johnson. Everything on Lenox Avenue is my business." I kept my voice calm. "The kid walks away now." Tank reached for his knife. He never got the chance to draw it. 2 seconds later, he was on the ground with a broken wrist. His friends helped him up and disappeared. Marcus was bleeding from his nose, one eye swollen shut. I helped him to his feet. "What is your name, kid?" "Marcus Henderson." "What do you do for work?" "I don't have work, just got out of jail. Nobody will hire me." I studied him, 19 years old, no job fresh out of prison, but he'd fought 3 men to protect $5. That told me everything about his character. "You want a job?" Marcus stared at me like I'd offered him $1 million. "Yes, sir, I do. Be at Small's Paradise tomorrow morning at 8. Ask for Bumpy Johnson." That is how Marcus Henderson became part of my organization. Started as a runner, carrying messages, collecting debts. But he was smart, observant, loyal. Within 2 years, he was handling my books. Within 5 years, he was my lieutenant. Within 10 years, he was my closest friend. I taught him everything. How to read people, how to negotiate, how to command respect without violence. I brought him into my home, let him meet my wife, trusted him with secrets I'd never shared with anyone. And Marcus earned that trust when the Genovese family tried to muscle into our numbers operation in 1954. Marcus stood beside me. When corrupt cops tried to shut down our policy banks, Marcus found the evidence that ended their careers. When Dutch Schultz's old crew came looking for revenge, Marcus helped me send them a message. For 15 years, Marcus Henderson was my right hand, my brother, the man I trusted more than anyone. I should have seen the signs. Should have noticed when he started asking different questions, when he became interested in details that didn't concern his part of the operation, when he started recording our conversations in his little notebook, claiming he wanted to keep better records. But I didn't see it, because I trusted him completely, because family doesn't betray family, because I couldn't imagine the man I'd saved, taught, and loved like a brother would ever turn against me. The first hint came in January 1962. My lawyer, David Cohen, called me into his office on a Tuesday morning. David had been defending Harlem numbers runners for 20 years. "Bumpy," he said, closing his door. "We need to talk. The FBI knows too much." I sat down across from his desk. "What do you mean?" 3 cases this month, 3 of your men arrested on numbers charges. Each time, the FBI knew exactly where to look, exactly when to move. So they didn't get this from surveillance. Someone is giving them specifics, someone close to your operation. I felt my blood go cold. How close? Close enough to know your meeting schedules, your money routes, Which policy banks are moving the most cash on which days? That narrowed it down to 4 people. Me, my wife, Mame, Marcus, and my other lieutenant, Willie Fishes Jackson. I knew it wasn't me or Mame. You think it is Willie? David shook his head. Willie's been arrested twice this year. If he was cooperating, they'd have cut him loose. This is someone they're protecting. I left David's office with my mind racing. One of my closest friends was betraying me. But which one? Over the next 2 weeks, I set up a test. I told Willie one story about a fictional policy bank in the Bronx. I told Marcus a different story about a fictional meeting with corrupt police officials in Brooklyn. Then I waited to see which story the FBI acted on. 3 days later, FBI agents raided an empty warehouse in Brooklyn at the exact time and location I'd mentioned to Marcus. My heart broke and my blood boiled. Marcus, my closest friend, my brother, the man I'd saved from a beating, the man I'd made rich, the man I'd trusted with my life. But I needed real proof, so I set up one more test. On Monday morning, I called Marcus into my office above Small's Paradise. I told him I had a big shipment of money coming from our Philadelphia numbers operation. $500,000 in cash. It would be stored in a safe house on 125th Street for 2 hours before being distributed. I need you to oversee the security personally, I told him. This is too important to trust to anyone else. Marcus nodded seriously. Of course, Bumpy. You can count on me. The address was fake. The money didn't exist. The safe house was a vacant apartment I'd rented for this test. But I had Willie and 3 men watching from across the street with cameras. 2 hours after my conversation with Marcus, FBI agents surrounded the building and stormed the empty apartment. I had my proof. That night, I called Marcus at home. Meet me at Sylvia's restaurant on 126th Street, I said. 9 o'clock. We need to discuss the Philadelphia situation. Of course, Bumpy. I'll be there. Sylvia's was busy that night. The dinner crowd was finishing meals. Conversations were loud, and nobody paid attention to 2 well-dressed black men in the corner booth. Perfect for what needed to be said. Marcus arrived exactly at 9, sliding into the booth with a smile. How did it go today? The Philadelphia delivery? Funny you should ask, I said, studying his face. The FBI seemed very interested in 125th Street today. Almost like someone told them exactly where to look. Marcus's expression didn't change. He was good. 15 years of training had made him a skilled liar. That is strange. Maybe we have a leak somewhere. Maybe we do. I leaned forward. Marcus, we've been friends for 15 years. We've been through wars together. I've trusted you with everything. So I'm going to ask you a direct question. Are you working with the FBI? For just a moment, I saw something flicker in Marcus's eyes. Fear, guilt, the look of a man whose secret had been discovered. But then he recovered. Bumpy, how can you even ask me that? After everything we've been through, I would never betray you. Never. He was still lying. But his voice carried real pain. Whatever reasons he had for betraying me, it wasn't easy for him. Show me your chest, I said quietly. What? Unbutton your shirt. Marcus went pale. Bumpy, what are you talking about? The wire, Marcus, the recording device the FBI gave you. Show me. The color drained completely from Marcus's face. His hands began to shake. For 10 seconds we stared at each other across that table in Sylvia's restaurant. 10 seconds that felt like 10 years. Finally, Marcus reached up and slowly unbuttoned his shirt. Taped to his chest was a small recording device. Wires running to a microphone hidden in his jacket pocket. Why? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. They had me, Bumpy. They arrested me 6 months ago on tax evasion charges. They showed me evidence that could put me away for 20 years. They said if I helped them, they'd make it all disappear. If I didn't, I'd die in prison. So you chose to betray me instead. I chose to survive. His voice cracked. I have a wife, Bumpy. I have children. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to come to me. You were supposed to trust the man who saved your life. You were supposed to remember that family doesn't abandon family. I reached across the table and pulled the wire from his chest. The device was still recording. I held it up between us. How many conversations, Marcus? How many of our private moments did you sell to the FBI? All of them, he whispered. Every conversation for 6 months. They know everything, Bumpy, about the policy banks, the collections, the payments to police officials, everything. I crushed the recording device in my hand and dropped the pieces on the table. $30,000, that is what they're paying you, right? I know, because I have people in the FBI too. $30,000 for 15 years of brotherhood. Marcus was sobbing now. I am sorry, God, Bumpy. I am sorry. I never wanted to hurt you, but they gave me no choice. There is always a choice, Marcus. There is always a choice between the easy way and the right way. You chose easy. I stood up from the booth. You have 24 hours to disappear. Take your family and go somewhere far away. Because if I see you after tomorrow night, I won't just be disappointed. I'll be dangerous. Marcus looked up at me through his tears. What about the information I gave them? Let me worry about the FBI. You worry about staying alive. I walked out of Sylvia's restaurant that night knowing I'd lost my closest friend. Knowing that 15 years of loyalty had been destroyed by 6 months of fear. Knowing that the man I'd saved and loved like a brother had chosen survival over honor. But I also knew something else. Marcus Henderson would never betray anyone again. By morning, Marcus and his family had packed everything they could carry and disappeared. I heard they moved to Detroit, then Chicago, then Los Angeles. Always running. Always looking over their shoulders, because once you betray Bumpy Johnson, you never stop being afraid. The FBI came to arrest me 2 weeks later. They had Marcus's recordings. They had his testimony. They had enough evidence to put me away for life. But when they played those tapes in court, something interesting happened. Every conversation had been edited. Every incriminating statement had been taken out of context. Every piece of evidence Marcus thought he'd given them was worthless, because Marcus was an emotional wreck by the time he testified. He kept breaking down, contradicting himself, making the prosecutors look foolish. You see, I knew about Marcus's betrayal long before I confronted him, and once I knew, I fed him exactly the information I wanted the FBI to have. I turned his betrayal against him. I used his wire to spread false information to protect my real operations, and to make the FBI waste months chasing ghosts. In the end, the case against me was dismissed. Marcus Henderson had betrayed his best friend, destroyed his family, and ruined his life for nothing. Years later, someone asked me why I let Marcus live, why I didn't have him killed like other men who'd crossed me. The answer is simple. Death would have been mercy. Living with what he'd done, running for the rest of his life, knowing he'd destroyed everything good for 30 pieces of silver. That was justice. Marcus Henderson taught me something important. The people closest to you can hurt you the most, but they can also teach you the most about loyalty, honor, and what it really means to be family. Real family doesn't betray you when times get hard. Real family doesn't sell you out when they get scared. Real family faces the consequences together. And sometimes, the most personal justice is letting a man live with the weight of his choices. If this story of friendship, betrayal, and the true meaning of loyalty moved you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you believe that some bonds should never be broken for money. Share this with someone who needs to understand the difference between survival and honor. And let me know in the comments, what would you have done in Marcus's position? Remember, in this life, you can lose your money, your power, even your freedom. But once you lose your honor, you can never get it back.